take a backseat. I wanna keep myself clean, I'm so organic. Don't wanna cover my face, my smile lights up the place, so please don't panic. My social credit score is gonna be on the floor. I will break it. The way it's going right now, the world will end anyhow. Any second, to all my pure blood, don't trust the science. Outcast, living in defiance, saying free up, so nothing can go wrong. No GMO, the way we belong, you know it. Pure blood, don't trust the science. Outcast, living in defiance, saying free up, so nothing can go wrong. No GMO, the way we belong. Don't want no mRNA, I'll have to go my own way if I can make it. But now to go to the soul, I'm gonna need a passport, hope I can fake it. I'd like to fly on a plane or take a ride on a train. I'm stuck in traffic, up in the land of the free, the home of liberty. It's doggone tragic. Nowadays, things are moving fast. Hold on to yesterday and make it last. Everywhere I turn, the faces seem strange. People changing up their DNA. You are the pure blood, don't trust the science. Outcast, living in defiance, saying free up so nothing can go wrong. No GMO, the way we belong, you know it. Pure blood, don't trust the science. Outcast, living in defiance, saying free up so nothing can go wrong. No GMO, the way we belong. You're doing too much, nobody will ever ask for. Lockdown and they digital passports. Meanwhile, the gas is $5. If you're ready for a revolution, holla. 15 days and feels like eternity. How many ways and politicians burning me. Shuts me down when I'm about to blow up. Keep playing games, you bound to get toe up.
Y'all, we're gonna get going. We shadow band, y'all. We shadow band. Did you get the alert? Did you get the alert?
Pure blood, don't trust the science. Outcast, living in defiance, saying free up so nothing can go wrong. No GMO, the way we belong, you know it. Pure blood, don't trust the science. Outcast, living in defiance, saying free up so nothing can go wrong. No GMO, the way we belong. No GMO, the way we belong. No GMO, the way we belong. Pure blood.
What up, everybody? What up? What up? Thank you for joining us on another episode, y'all, of Most Hated Mondays. As you can see, we are heavily shadow banned, y'all. That was a song called, Pure Bloods. Get your popcorn and drinks, y'all. That was a song called Pure Bloods off the album Pure Bloods by Seth, also known as Venice Beach Dub Club. Thank you, Polish guy. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, guys. We're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. I'm going to do my real quick intro, and we're going to get right to the show, y'all, all right? As you know, when you speak the truth, they shadow ban you, y'all. I'm sure I'm shadow banned. As you can see, there's 7 people in here right now. The people will trickle in as the show goes on. But last week on Thursday, y'all, or last week on Friday, I got banned on this account, you guys. Thank goodness it was only for 24 hours, but I was banned from going live. So I am very thankful. Instagram, again, I want to thank Instagram for allowing us to have this discussion tonight, because that's what it's going to be. Hopefully, you guys, we have an amazing guest on tonight. But again, thank you, Instagram, for allowing us to have this discussion tonight. If you didn't get a chance to catch last week's episode with Jericho Green, guys, you can catch that on the profile and on my highlights. Pretty much, I have all the episodes there. The only one missing is episode number 2. It was removed from my account. I don't know how, I don't know why, but it is up on YouTube. I don't really do much of these shows on YouTube, but episode 1 and 2 were uploaded. Actually, 1, 2, and 3 were uploaded. Episode 3 with Dr. Assad was removed from YouTube. So, but every other episode is here on Instagram still, you guys. So if you missed last week's episode with Jericho Green, or the week before that with Lucas Lepagian of Tin Horn Flats, or the one before that with Official DVS 7.0, or the one with Mitchell Bosch, or the one with Dr. Assad, or the one with Hypno 313, catch them all on my page, you guys. So tonight, we have a very special guest, you guys. It's going to be more of a discussion forum tonight, you guys. So if you guys want to go ahead and throw your comments in the question box, or throw your comments, I'm going to try to pay attention to your guys' comments in the, in the comments as you guys are watching the show as well. I'll do my best on that. But, we have a really cool guest on tonight, you guys. I just came across her page maybe a month ago, maybe a few weeks ago, and I heard her speak, and I was like, wow. Like, a lot of the things that I say, I heard her saying, but I think she's got quite a much more special story to tell than I do, and she's got firsthand experience in things that I always give my opinion on, but now tonight we're going to get to hear her, opinion coming from being a teacher, you guys. Obviously, she's a mother, too. If you guys have seen the advertisement, she's not only a mother, she's a teacher. She's become, I think, more recently a creator, and she's just an awesome, awesome person. And the more you listen to her and the more you watch her, the more you're going to like her. So, without further ado, let me bring on Stephanie Edmonds right now. And we'll do the show, you guys. So again, shoot your comments in the question box if you guys have any comments.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. I'm kind of new to following you and hearing your story and your message, but I mean, the first time I heard you, there's just some people, that just get you, and you were one of them. And so, I'd give you a chance to introduce yourself to the people in a moment, but thank you for joining tonight. Thank you for agreeing to come on. Again, hope you're having a good day. And if you want to say any short words in the beginning to the people.
No, yeah, for sure. I appreciate you having me. I saw that you just started having up these conversations, and I'm pretty much open to talking to anybody. Like you said, I'm from the New York City area. I actually live in Connecticut, like just outside the city, but I was working as an educator in the Bronx. I was teaching social studies in high school, mostly 10th grade global history, but some other courses as well along the way, American history, government, some reading stuff as well. And when the vaccine mandates came along, I had to hold the line. It was one step too far for me. I complied with their school closures, even though I spoke out against them. I complied with their masking, even though I spoke out against it. But when it came to the vaccine, I couldn't do this. I'm going to speak out against it, but comply. It crossed too many boundaries for me.
Gotcha. And I know a lot of people in here, myself included, we may not know necessarily your entire story. So, and I'm sure if you're on other shows, everybody asks you kind of some of the same questions, but just to kind of set the table for our discussion today, can you just tell the people a little bit about who you are? What's your background? You can go into your personal, whatever you want to share, both personally and professionally, to kind of set the table for our discussion.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm an educator. This would have been my 6th year teaching in New York City schools. I've been teaching for about 5 years before that. As I was going through college and grad school, I was a tutor and I was a substitute teacher. So I've been teaching for over a decade at this point. Before I was in the high school, I was doing like more one-on-one stuff, a lot of reading, phonics, math, and then also some coaching. So I was a big athlete growing up. Ice hockey was my main sport. I played I went to boarding school for a few years in high school, and I was like kind of like gonna play in college, and then I sort of like was like, girls don't play professional hockey, like what am I doing? And I kind of like self-sabotaged and ended up playing club hockey in college, but it was all for the better. But I've always kind of been one to question the system. I haven't always really been like one who like super always fit in with the crowd. I've always been different. I've always been like a skater, like a skateboarder, and I credit skateboarding with a lot of my ability to just like go out and try and do things and kind of like mess up a lot and just be like, oh well, like I just busted my ass in front of all you guys, but I'm gonna get up and keep skating now, like peace, you know.
Right.
Um, so that's kind of a little bit on my background. I'm born and raised right here outside New York City. You know, like when I say the city, like that's in New York City my whole life. Very, you know, Yankees, Northeast kind of kid.
All right. All right. And what grade did you teach, or what grade do you teach, or did you teach?
Yeah, so like I was mainly teaching 10th grade global history. Like I
Oh
taught
wow.
that all 5 years, like at least like three sections of that. And then like I did a couple years of US history, a couple years of government, but I always taught like global history. Like that's my bread and butter.
Okay. All right. And so kind of just tell the people you were teaching. The pandemic hit. I believe pretty much schools shut down everywhere, right? In
Yeah,
the
more or
entire
less.
country. Yeah. And then so the school shut down, and then they reopened schools in New York. Can you kind of take us from there? What happened with your story from that point?
Yeah, so I remember initially when school shut down, I was kind of ahead of the curve on everyone. I was like, oh, I think we should shut down schools. But after that initial 2 weeks, I was sort of like, I don't know. I'm looking at the data and I don't think that, I think that we need to open up before the end of the year. That's really what I was thinking. But that came and went, but definitely by summer. In the summer, I was like, okay, these schools should open. Like, I'm out here, I'm hanging out, I'm moving around. Like, I'm we should be vigilant, but we can open the schools. And then, you know, the whole thing with Trump happened. Trump said we should open the schools. So everybody was like, we shouldn't open the schools. And then whatever, we ended up with this hybrid situation. I was in person, and real quick, you could tell because in New York City, they gave very wide spanning accommodations. So teachers could basically say like they had high blood pressure or they were overweight or like, you know, it was pretty wide. You could do anything. Just get a doctor to sign more or less and teach it and work at home if you wanted to. And now there's people who worked from home because like that's what their school asked them to do, not like they apply for accommodations, whatever. That's a different story. But a lot of teachers took accommodations, so there was this kind of like line that was drawn between the teachers that were like in the building and in person and who were out of the building. But it's whatever. I was in the building. I chose to be there. That's where I wanted to be. I believed in it. And you know what? First, I was a little nervous, you know, but after a couple weeks of like being in person, like being next to the kids, you realize like masks really are BS. Like they're going up and down all day. Like I'm in the kids' face anyways. Um, and whatever. And but November, I think it was like no, it was right before Thanksgiving. New York City hit this threshold of 3% that had been randomly decided between the city and the union that would be this threshold to like close down schools, even though it literally means nothing, right? And so schools shut down, and I'm just like, this is crazy. There's no date to reopen. Like, schools should be open. And so that's when I started going out and protesting. I was one of a few teachers. I was really the only very consistent teacher out there. There was one other teacher who was pretty consistent with me. But it was not an easy position to take, let's say. I gained myself a multi-borough reputation, you could say that.
And you mentioned something when you said that the schools first came back, they were hybrid. So there was some in person, some online, and the teachers kind of got to, did you say they got to choose whether they kind of like, they could find a way out of it basically if they didn't want to
Yeah,
be in
you
person?
know, it definitely would vary from school to school. I'm sure it looked different from school to school. There's 1,800 schools in New York City. But accommodations were pretty widespread.
Right.
And easy to get if you wanted it, and a lot of teachers took advantage of it. And now there's teachers who I like definitely think like I would have advocated for probably like getting some sort of accommodation because like they are either really old or like had some health issue, and I would hope that while they're on accommodation they're like tending to that health issue and hopefully like putting themselves in a better position. And at that time we had vaccines available, we had therapeutics available, like if you wanted them. So I also felt more comfortable about that. um but I thought a lot of people were definitely taking advantage of the system.
Yeah.
And I felt like the message from the schools in the city felt like it's dangerous. Like you shouldn't come here like if you don't need to. And a lot of schools were really saying that to parents. Now, my school that I was definitely not. My school was much more like, I think, open to kids coming in, and it might have varied from teacher to teacher, but like when I was calling my kids, I was like, we want you in the building. It's safe. We have plenty of precautions, like da da da. So
Mhm.
I think teachers in my school at least were given the message to like encourage, but that's not what I saw across the city. The message we got from the union, from the city, from anywhere you go around the city, vaccination buses everywhere, testing tents literally on every corner, subways plastered in mask up, and like all this different type of propaganda about like how people wear their mask and like what that says about them. Like if you wear it around the chin, like you don't care about people. Like if you're speaking to each other and you're masked up, like that's okay, but like sitting masked up quietly, that's better. Like we don't want social interaction. Like the propaganda in New York City, it's easing up now a little bit, though they're trying to get more federal funds. I think that's a lot of what this continuation of these policies is, because they have to have an emergency because they're addicted to these federal funds. So I think that's what it's about. It's easing up a little bit, but the propaganda in New York City is next level. So I
Yeah.
know a lot of people can say like, oh, how do they let this happen? How do they let this happen? I promise you, they have not been coming anywhere near as hard on you as they've been coming at to the people in New York City. The
Yeah.
people in New York City have been psychologically abused on another level. So
I agree.
you can't understand that if you're not in the city.
I agree. I agree. The propaganda, and basically the information war that we're in, right? They're being hit with nonstop mass propaganda, and we'll hopefully talk about that in a few minutes. But you mentioned also a little bit some division among the staff. Like, what was it like being in a school? Because like, and I'm here just so you know, I'm not going to be here to debate you. I want you to give your. That's not what this show is going to be about. I might play a little devil's advocate, just
Yeah,
to,
for
for sake of
sure.
conversation with you. But for people that might follow me, I've been a harsh critic of teachers. I've been a harsh critic of mothers, and things like that. And I want to get into your last little video that you just posted today in a little bit too. So I don't want to kind of get ahead of myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, we can talk
but
about it though, for
but talk a
sure.
little bit about the division. Yeah, inside, what was that like? Because not a lot of people. We can sit out here and talk,
Right.
but what was
So
it
again,
like?
I'm
You know,
sure it's going to vary from school to school. Like I can obviously, you always, I think, form your perceptions based on your own immediate experience. And then, of course, you have exposure in a way that, people who aren't teachers don't, to like the teaching world more generally. But of course, the root of my perceptions are going to be based on my individual experience. And also, like, I like my school, like I like my admin, I like the people I work with. Like, of course, I have criticisms and, even some personal things maybe where but in terms of working, I thought the way that I worked with my coworkers, it worked well. Obviously things could be improvement. I liked my school. I just want to say that. Um, and my school is different from the city in general. So, but for sure, like there's definitely, I think even before the pandemic, right? I I could have told you more or less what the dividing line would have been, Like if somebody's like, oh, there's going to be this crazy event and teachers are, going to be asked to come into the building because they need their help. What teachers in your building would volunteer to come? And I could have told you, maybe within an error of one or two teachers, who those teachers would have been.
Mm-hmm.
And today, for example, somebody tweeted, I make content for this platform called Chalkboard Review, and one of the other content creators tweeted out something about how teachers complaining about the profession would likely complain about any profession they were in, right? It's more of a personality thing than it is the profession itself. And I've always kind of felt that way. I felt that way before I became a teacher. Like, I remember complaining so much when I was a kid about teachers who just felt like they were clocking in, clocking out. Like, I've had a teacher, his name was Mr. Franchina, and he said to us, I don't care. I get my paycheck at the end of the week no matter how you guys do. And it's like, okay, on the one hand, that's true. And maybe if some kid's being like a real a-hole to you, you can just like remind the kid that, their behavior doesn't really impact you. But just like, it was something that he said often in his class, like when he didn't feel like we were taking to his lessons in the way that he wanted us to, really. And so I don't mean to critique teachers in a way where I'm trying to destroy the profession. I do it in a way where, like, I think that you need to hold your own accountable before you can hold anything else accountable, right? Like, you need to clean up your own home. So any critiques that I have, like, aren't necessarily personal. It's just about trying to make the profession better. And perhaps, when you vent or, social media isn't always the most conducive way to doing those. People come in with preconceptions and stuff, but I hope that overall I'm doing more good than getting sucked into those negative things.
Right, right. And what about also the students, like being a 10th grade teacher of teenagers essentially, right? And I mean,
Yeah.
I went out and I actually protested in front of my schools. We have an elementary, a middle school, and a high school, right? And I was like, I just had enough one day, and I'm like, I'm going out there. I'm really protesting to the parents, sending their children masked, and
Okay.
I'm one of those people, right? But it was insane, the vitriol that you get from these teenagers, right? But being a teacher, what was the student? What were where you live? Because every area is different, right? But going back in time to that first time when you opened up. What was the student? Did the students like to wear the mask? Did they want to wear the mask? Because I often, like, even out here recently, there's still kids who wear it outside walking home. And I was always like, it's become part of people's, wardrobe. And like,
Right.
kids, adolescents they like the whole thing. Like, it became this, like, I don't know,
Maybe.
life of its own. But what was it like with the students where you were at?
I mean, I felt like all the kids were pretty lax with the masking. Like every once in a while there was a kid who like might be kind of adamant about it, but for the most part, they just seem like the kids did it because they were supposed to do it. And most of the kids, like if the kids were in school, it's because they wanted to be there. Like the kids who were coming to school last year only came if they wanted to, really. Like they valued that space, whether it be because they had a lot of siblings at home or they had no siblings at home, right? Like either they had no quiet space or like they were isolated. We had kids who have unstable housing situations, whether they're homeless or live in some type of shelter situation or, placed by the city in a home, foster kids who had parents who died during the pandemic, who being in their home, all they would think about is their parent, but going to school gave them an opportunity to escape. So the kids who wanted to come to school, really, or who were there really wanted to. And once you were kind of in that environment, it just you realize it's not a big deal. Also, there wasn't a lot of people around the building in general. I would have maybe 8 or 10 kids. So classrooms weren't full. We weren't, in my school at least, we weren't being super strict during for that hybrid school year. And I know that there were some teachers who were strict, like, because I would either be in the room and the teacher would be like, pull up your mask. And like, I'm not going to tell another teacher, like, hey, don't do that. But like, I don't do that. I never enforced masking in my class unless there was like an admin walking by or I like got a text or something being like, hey, you need to do this. I never told kids to pull up their mask. And then kids would come in my room and they would say like, "Oh, so and so was yelling at us about the mask or whatever." Like, or like, "Yeah, we know Miss Edmonds is cool." Like, this and that. And I'm not trying to be like the cool teacher or whatever. Like, that's not my goal. Like, to be their friends or this and that. But kids kind of get it. They know where they can go, and it's like a safe haven for not having to have somebody who's like constantly on you masking. But like, I wouldn't tell a kid who like I can tell like really believed in the masking or hadn't, it felt like it was more like they were hiding behind the mask. I'm also not gonna like say anything to make that kid feel uncomfortable either. Just like if
Yeah.
I have a kid who was having like gender identity issues, right? Like I'm not like hiding anything from their parents, but I'm also like not gonna like be trying to like offend the kid in any way, Like I try to make everybody feel welcome in my classroom and also like stick to my values. So it's hard to say. Like when I was in school at the beginning of this year, it kind of seemed the same way as well. Like it seems like there was definitely more kids who were like more adamant about masking just because there was more kids, right? But there was plenty of kids who were just like pulling it up and down or whatever. And then there was some teachers who were like really strictly enforcing it. But there was definitely more building enforcement in general, I guess, because again, there's more kids, more rules have to be in place when there's more people. So
Yeah, and I was just going to say that, as time progressed and people started coming back, things almost seemed to get worse, like, right, as time went on, more restrictions in the classrooms, like people started buying into it either more or some people might have started awakening more. But was there like any sort of like ratting, I guess, for other words, like if there was a policy in play within your school, let's say, for masking, and there's teachers like you who weren't maybe enforcing it, but there's other teachers who are over the top with it. What did that ever come across as an issue amongst any teachers, like saying, hey, why aren't they enforcing it? Or like, or
not
vice versa?
really. Not really.
Or how about
Uh,
parents? How about
no,
any parents
like
calling saying,
no, not with any parents really at all either. So what I found was like the masking thing, it feels more like a compliance based thing, right? Teachers who kind of like I felt like had a little bit of compliance issues in their classroom to begin with, like their classroom management was more compliance based rather than like relationship based, right? Like
yep,
so of course you want to have rules in your classroom and structures that kids follow, but like, are the kids following it because like they're buying into the culture of your classroom, or are they following it because like it has to be done for compliance? There's like a fundamental difference there. So I felt like teachers who were always kind of like on the more compliance based side of things were the more one who masked. But like for instance, I could walk into that teacher's room without a mask and they would never tell me to put on a mask.
right,
Right? They would never say anything to me because they kind of know it's silly.
yeah,
So I definitely saw that. I definitely was known as an anti-masker. Like I would put out things on Twitter. I was pretty open with my anti-masker on Twitter and stuff, and like I was told by my principal a bunch of times like I'm on your side, but like you need to chill because I'm like trying to do things here and you're like messing up like my thing. Like we'll get there, but like you need to chill with your anti-mask stuff. And I'd be like, okay, and then like say
yeah.
something else problematic. So
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, a lot of people were put in a lot of tough situations, you know what I mean? And I don't think we're going to really get into, all the dynamics of COVID-19 to argue or go back and forth on
yeah,
everything that happened. But as you say stuff, it's like bringing up all these memories of the past. Like we all forget all these details of things that happened over the last 2 years that we all had to go through or that other people had to go through. But you mentioned earlier some of the and I wrote some things down. I kind of wanted to touch on this too, but like some of like the negative stigmas of teachers, like the teacher that you mentioned. I get my paycheck every week. You know, some people take the side that say teachers are underpaid and undervalued. Other people say that they're underqualified, you know, that they're not really, or they're not putting in the best faith
Right.
effort.
I mean, I think it's like any profession, right? Like policing is another big one. There's a lot of issues with policing. There's a lot of corruption. It's closely entwined with politics. There's you don't necessarily like policing. I think in New York City, at least, you only need 2 years of college. You know, teaching education degrees are notoriously like easy. You know, there's a lot of grade inflation, and I say all that to like again critique my own profession, but without discounting the fact that there's so many amazing teachers,
Right.
right? There's so many amazing people, and even some of the people who I'm like not always necessarily, you know, thrilled with or think they're the best. Like a lot of people are really dedicated to the kids still, right? So when I say these critiques of things, it's not because I like want to destroy public education. Like I love public education. I think public education is a cornerstone of democracy. Now, do I think compelled education is, and in the way that we implement public education? Perhaps not. Um, but I think that it is so important for any kid from any background to be able to walk into their neighborhood school and get a high quality education regardless of what goes on in their home, and for them to have a place where like no, the state can't do everything for every kid. You know, we can't just be like giving things away, but we can do something, right? We can at least try to do something, right? That's where equity is. Equity should be in access, not in, but once you beyond the access point, that's where we kind of make that mistake. Like I think with a lot of, you can, this is kind of sidebar, but you know, trace a lot of this welfare policy back to like the post civil rights era. A lot of the welfare stuff that we did. A really great documentary that people should watch is Who Killed Michael Brown, by father and son, so I forget what their names are, but it's Who Killed Michael Brown. It's a father and son duo. The father's like a civil rights activist, marched alongside like Martin Luther King, all that. But they go into how the way that welfare is structured is, you know, creates a cycle of poverty rather than actually creates that equity to access that is like the American dream.
Mm-hmm. All right. And what role do you have as a teacher versus what's driven, I guess, maybe for lack of a better words, top down as far as curriculum? Like a lot of people now, like before we start getting into the mandates and stuff real quick, just trying to set the table and give some people some insight into a teacher's view of things. What role do you have, or what role do teachers have as far as their curriculums go? Because there's a lot of talk, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, on critical race theory, LGBTQ in schools and stuff like that. And Joe Rose, which I'm sure you know her obviously, she says we're supposed to teach children how to think, not what to think. So give your opinion on and tell us what the role is, and then give us your opinion on
so you know, it's gonna vary a lot from school to school, or district to district, and then school to school, the way that these things are being implemented. I would say in a place like my school, we were rather insulated by it. However, it was more and more like creeping in. And some of it I think is okay, and some of it I felt like was definitely influencing people to hedge statements or make statements they might not necessarily make. I guess there was something early on in it was like my first or second year teaching. I started this club, funny enough, called the Woke Cafe. This was before woke was really popularized in just like common vernacular. It was like right before it became popular, and right before a lot of this woke stuff really like took off in popular culture. It was probably around the same time as the stuff was happening at Green, where Brett Weinstein and Heather Weinstein were teaching.
Not aware of that.
Okay, in Portland, so he has the Dark Horse podcast, and they were like run off their campus. Anyways, it was like around that same time, we started this club called the Woke Cafe, and we had a meeting, and it was like pretty cool. We had like 15, 20 kids there. We had a great discussion. I can't remember what the topic was, but I remember it being successful. But then after we did it, we got approached by these 3 Black teachers, and I'm obviously white, and then the teacher I was doing with it was Cuban, but he was like a Spanish Cuban,
Mm-hmm.
So not a indigenous Cuban, so very like, white looking. And so they said that we couldn't call it Woke Cafe because that's like a Black term. It comes from like Black vernacular, and we're like culturally appropriating, and it just became like this whole thing. And then basically the person who I did it with ended up getting pushed out of the school. So, there's things like that, I would say. In terms of my own personal class, like I had very wide latitude in what I taught. Like I taught the curriculum, you know what I mean? But nobody was coming into my classroom and telling me that I had to teach history a certain way. Now I included the 1619 project in my curriculum on my own. Nobody told me to do that, but I did it in a way that I was using it as one resource among other resources. So it was just one perspective or one way to approach like race in America. And then I was offering other ones like the 1776 project, for example.
Okay. Somebody put a comment in here, and I wanted to transition to this. You mentioned earlier some teachers are like compliance-based and some are relationship-based. And this guy here, Mr. Fox, mentioned, he posted, "We all remember our good teachers." And as soon as he posted that, what came to my mind was, my 3rd grade teacher. And she was my favorite teacher. And because I was going back to your comments on the compliance versus relationship, I have teachers in my family as well. And some of the teachers in my family, they've never taught me, but I already know how I grew up with them. They're very compliance based, right? And I'm drawing the parallels here, and you're right. Like that seems to be like I'm sure there's just like everything, there's a spectrum, right? But compliance based versus relationship based. We all remember our good teachers. Every age is different, but I think what he's implying there is we remember the teachers who spent the time to create a relationship with their students. And so what are your thoughts real quick? And then I'm going to let you tell your story leading up to, I guess either your resignation or termination, probably termination, I would guess, because I don't see you as someone who was going to give up. But what are your thoughts on that? And like, as an educator, like, I'm pretty sure your relationship, you can answer that, but like compliance-based teaching, which one's better? Compliance, relationship?
Well,
yeah,
so before I was teaching Liberty, my name was Class Disruption. And it was a play on like my major critique of the education system being so compliance based. And then also it was kind of like I'm not going to be scared to speak my mind, because my ultimate goal was to be able to speak about like CRT and a lot of these things I saw coming down the pipeline, because I was a big YouTuber. So like I saw these issues and I was like, these guys are doing it, like I can talk about these issues,
Mm-hmm.
So that was always one of my issues I had. Like when I was in high school, I would see a lot of kids, when I was in 9th grade, 10th, 11th, and 12th, I went to boarding school, so I got a big contrast as to what it could be, right? So I would see in high school, like basically if the kid was just acting out in class, the teacher would just be like, security, like real quick, And so like, of course, like you can't tolerate like kids like over and over again just continually interrupting the learning. Like that's a different story. But I just felt like teachers didn't really try to engage these kids. And sometimes these kids were like my friends, like outside of class, who, were just having a hard time getting through high school. And I'm like, all right, like, okay, you're an asshole. Like you're an asshole. Like you sometimes do things in class that are like, you shouldn't do that. I get it, but I also knew that they were smart, and I knew that they had like value to add. but I didn't see most teachers attempting to engage that value in any authentic way
Mhm.
before just being like, get out, you know? So again, there's a difference between just like endlessly tolerating like kids who are just like can't are not adjusted enough to be in a traditional classroom setting versus again that building relationships.
Right, right.
And now in education, that's a big, I would say, platitude that people say, oh, building relationships, building relationships. So I'm trying not to say it too much, but I do think by adding that juxtaposition to the compliance space, it adds that nuance that we need to like have a real conversation to move this forward.
Right,
And
right.
I do think that this is a good way to segue us into the mandates thing, because more generally in society, that's the trend that we see, right? We see all these well-trained, compliance-based people that it's just kind of easier to like sit in the back of the class and like go along to get along and like get your C grade or whatever than it is to like put your hand up and ask those hard questions and whatever. And then you have like the super smart kids who are at the front of the room, right? And they just want to get really good grades and pass. So they're also like really into the compliance based ways. So you really only have those kids like in the middle of the room, and then some of those kids are getting kicked out of the room, because there's no attempt to authentically engage them. It's just like you're canceled. So I really think that the you can see the metaphor of a classroom played out then in the real world.
Mhm.
And if we want to have a democracy, we need to find a better way to do school.
Absolutely. What are some of
Republic.
your what are some of your real quick, of ideas on maybe one or two things on what could help improve that?
Well, I think, we talk a lot about the actual classroom and teacher praxis in the classroom and pedagogy and lessons and curriculum and school board policy and superintendents and all that stuff is really important. But I think what's really missing from the conversation is the teacher training piece, right? We need to look at what's actually going on in these schools of education, because it's it's really just not hard. Like education classes are very easy. My hardest classes in grad school were my history courses, because I had to take, so I was, to become a high school teacher, you have to have core credits in history. And my graduate level history courses were my most intense courses. And I mean, overall, when I was in grad school, like I was working overnight at bars, I was like partying a lot. I met a guy and I like moved in with him and I like got pregnant and like I didn't even go to like my last semester of school. Like I did it all remotely, like before that was like even really a thing,
Hmm.
or it was like just kind of starting to be a thing. Um and had like a 3.9 GPA or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it just like it wasn't in the way that like becoming a lawyer or becoming a doctor or becoming these other things, they aren't that rigorous. I think a lot of the humanities kind of like suffer from this, is that there's just like a lack of rigor in the methodologies of the research that's being done. So a lot of bogus research gets shoved through and passed on as legitimate, and then it's used in this racket, right, to say like, oh, we need to have this initiative, oh, you need to do this in our school, so I'm going to write this book and then you can buy this book and we can create this course and have these presenters come, and it just becomes this cycle, and they're just pushing garbage. Like a lot of it, like learning styles, like everybody will talk about, oh, kids have different learning styles, which maybe in like a colloquial sense is true, but like the research behind learning styles is really bad. Like there's really not a lot of data to show that like the different types of learning styles mean a lot. Right? It might engage you. It goes more back to the relationships, right? It's like, okay, I might engage kids in different ways, but the actual ways that they're learning are going to be very similar. Like people are like, if you see something visually, it's just a stronger way to learn. Now, there might be some people who just happen to be really good at hearing things and can remember them like that, but that memory is also going to be strengthened by visual learning. So I think the learning styles things is just like a faux relation, going back to the relationships. And then I saw it again too, like the new thing is like trauma informed education. And they're just repackaging the same BS, which some of it is good, right? But then they add on top their jargon and their lingo, and it's all like feelings and like I don't know, like if kids are uncomfortable, they can't learn. I'm like, well, you have to be uncomfortable to learn. So, you, but that's where the real problem is. So I think that if we're really going to change how things are done in education, we need to look at our schools of education, and maybe they can't be saved. Maybe that really means just going out and creating our own schools, creating our own accrediting agencies, and just getting like really good people to teach. I don't know if you need to really be like trained in teaching, or like I don't know if everybody needs to be like a trained teacher. I think people who are coaches are like really good teachers. People who've been in business and doing like you can be a good teacher if you're really good at something. Right now, not everybody who's really good at something is a good teacher either. So
Right. That's true. That's true. Time's flying right now. So can you tell the people, first it was hybrid, then they shut the schools down, correct? Because they hit the 3% threshold or whatever they had set. But there was always mask mandates in play.
yeah, we always had masking, distancing, limitations on what we were supposed to be allowed to do, things like that.
So tell us about what led to either the first encounter that you had, or how were the mandates implemented? Because I mean, I've been, every place has been a little bit different.
Well, I mean,
but was there a deadline and another deadline, or how did that work?
So in terms of the vaccine mandates, right?
Yeah, because there's always been mask mandates, and we'll touch a little bit later on Mayor Adams and what's still happening. But yeah,
after a little, it was like in March 2021, finally they opened back the schools up for hybrid. We finished the year out hybrid. We did in-person summer school, which was awesome. Like we were at my school, we were allowed to basically design whatever summer school program we wanted. Because it was COVID, so the focus wasn't academics. It was like just getting kids back in school and excited for school. So I ran a program where we just went on 6 weeks of field trips. And we were going all throughout the city. And we were supposed to be masking, but once we left the building, we did not wear masks really, like unless we went to a museum or something that required it. So I was like super pumped from that, loving it. And then after that program ended, about a week later, the mayor announced, I believe it was August like 17th or something like that, that there was going to be a vaccine mandate for city workers. And
this
then
was August 2021, correct?
August 2021. Yep, this last summer. So it was at the end of the summer, and so it was like basically going into the year, I already knew I was like a dead man walking. I already knew. I mean, I kind of had faith. It wasn't really real until it was real. I always kind of thought the city was going to back down. I'm like, oh, they're just trying to pinch numbers. They're trying to push numbers. And then at the end, they're going to be like, okay, well, we got enough people vaccinated, or, they'll give us accommodations and stuff. And they're just like playing hardball. But I also knew at the same time, like, that I was never going to get the shot. Like, for me, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to wait until the very last minute to get it. Like, I knew from when they first started talking, like June 2020, remember when all those, like, it might have been a little before that, like May, all that stuff about the vaccine coming out and Bill Gates and like the conspiracy theories about what's in it and da-da-da. Like, I already knew from that time. I was like, listen, I don't know if it's not like I believe these conspiracy theories or not, but just for me, it's a time thing. If they come out with a vaccine next year, there's no way I'm going to take that. I just knew. I knew from that time there was no way that I would ever take something that was brand new. Like, I just wasn't that scared of COVID, and I was already feeling like, yo, like, this is crazy. Like, we have to move on. Like, we can't, at that time I was already like, all right, after the summer, this is gonna be over. Like we're gonna go back to school and it's gonna be normal. Like I was ready to move on. So yeah, so he announces at the end of the summer that there's gonna be this mandate in place. Start getting really, out there on the streets we had our first event put together by Michael Caine and Teacher for Choice. Shout out to him because he saw this coming before everybody, or at least everybody who I know. He was the first person who I saw back in August of 2020, so a whole year before that, talking about this kind of stuff. And I had kind of linked up with him on the open school stuff, and just on my own, I had refused testing. At school, they were going around trying to test everyone. I was like, no, 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 no. And I was told, like, oh, you have to, da, da, da. I was like, I'm good, And then they just kind of, like, let me do my thing, like, slide under the radar. But he had, like, done lawsuits on, like, the testing and stuff. So then we had linked up and I started working with him. So he put together this big protest. We had, like, 3,000 people down by City Hall. And yeah, I just started like live streaming all the protests that we would go to. But at my school, I wasn't really talking about it. Like there was a few teachers who I had been in the building with the previous year who knew, but it's not like we're going around at my school, like a lot of other schools, like talking about our vaccine status, talking about what we think about it. Like we're just focused on doing our work. I had some friction with some of my coworkers from the previous year from COVID, kind of feeling like, they slighted us by not being in the building. So I was just focused on making sure that I'm not letting any personal stuff get in the way. I'm doing what I need to do for my kids. And I just thought, like, if I just act like it's a real year and I just like get my classroom together and I just do everything, like that's just the energy and it's just gonna work out and we're gonna just teach and nobody will be the wiser,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It didn't work out that way. We had our lawsuit that we filed. Rachel Maniscalco was the lead of that, teacher from Staten Island. She was another big, inspiration in this whole thing, just seeing her take the lead and start off this lawsuit and, give hope to so many teachers, including myself, who didn't really, I can get on Instagram and I can speak and like I can make content, but I'm not good at the legal stuff like that. Like I'm just not. And so it's really good that we have so many different people using their abilities to uplift the movement. And so that lawsuit had gotten the DOE to have to extend the mandate 1 week, right? So we originally thought it was going to be like September 27th. And then we ended up being able to finish out the rest of that week. And it wasn't until like October 4th of the next week that we ended up leaving. And so on my second to last day in there, my principal called me in and I was like a little weirded out because like my admin hadn't been in my room at all. Like we had been in school for a month and like I have been asking for like pre-meetings and this and that. And like I'm pretty sure that they knew that I was unvaccinated, even though we never had the discussion about it. But just from my stance in the previous year, I'm pretty sure that they knew. And my principal called me in. He was just like, I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate what you're doing. You're valued here. Whatever decision you make is your own decision, da, da, da. And you're on good terms here. So I respect my principal a lot for that and my admin for just respecting what I had to do, Nobody made me feel at my school like I was a bad person for doing what I did or that I'm diseased or anything like that, So I know a lot of people did have different experiences and I feel very grateful for that. I even had a teacher from my school the other day who said like he didn't agree with my decision to get vaccinated, back in the day, but he texted me and he was like, I just wanted to let you know, like I was thinking about you, keep doing what you're doing. So I am super grateful to like be in a situation where I didn't have all these added extra stressors. But on my last day, the lesson that I taught to my students was in New York State, one of the things that they have are these things called enduring issues, right? Like throughout time, history repeats itself. We have these themes that replay over and over. And you have to, at the test at the end of the year, you have to kind of draw that connection between three events that occur in history. And so that's one of the skills that we work on from the beginning of the year. And we'll use like current events or different things that we're studying. So I was kind of introducing this topic to them of enduring issues, and I did the issue of freedom versus security. And so we started with a document from John Locke, right? Because John Locke, that's in his Treatise of Government, that's one of the things that he discusses. Like, why would somebody give up their freedom? Well, they would give it up so that they could have safety, right? And then I was like, okay, let's go to September 11th. So we read an article about September 11th, and it talks about how in the wake of September 11th, Americans gave up a lot of freedoms under the guise of safety and security, right? And we're never getting them back. And then I had timed it so that would be like the last 5 minutes of class. I was like, that brings us to today. And today, with COVID policy, we're seeing the same things play out. We're seeing our freedoms being eroded away because safety and security. And then I was like, I try not to do this because I want this classroom to be a place for you guys to form your own opinions. But I think that this issue is so fundamental that I'm going to tell you my opinion on this issue, basically. And my opinion is that the government has gone way too far. The city's mandate is way too far. And like, I was basically like, I'm about to cry right now. I was basically like, I'm unvaccinated, and so I'm not going to be here to be your teacher anymore because the city said I'm not allowed to work here because I'm unvaccinated. So that was my final lesson with my students. I haven't really had like a lot of contact or anything with students because, we're not supposed to legally, and I'm not technically terminated yet. I'm actually still on unpaid leave. And, like you said, I'm trying to fight this fight to the end. So I don't want to do anything that would like jeopardize our legal battle or whatever we would potentially be able to win from this, because I do feel like we should be reinstated and compensated. And even though I don't see my future with the DOE, like for the sake of principle, like the principle of the matter, I will go back, right? Just to be like, this is my job, right? And it was wrongfully taken from me, and and then I would throw a big party for my school. I don't know.
Right. That's crazy. That's crazy. So they put you on unpaid leave. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but are you able to claim unemployment, or were you able to get any sort of income, or are you on just no income and you had to figure out a way to move forward?
Yeah, so I was able to put myself in a position where I was just always kind of taught growing up, like, you need to have savings. Like, you should have 3 to 6 months of your monthly costs in the bank. So that was kind of something I was used to having. I was lucky also because from when we were not, from the lockdown to when I was like working at home a lot, I was able to save way more money because my costs were way lower. Like, I wasn't paying for parking, I wasn't paying for gas. Like, you don't have all the incidental costs of like going out after work with your friends, or just like, I'm around and I just like wanted to stop at the store real quick, and so I had been able to build back up my savings because I had bought a condo right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I was like, I had built back up my savings. I kind of knew there was like crazy stuff coming. I had just worked summer school, so I was like getting double paychecks during the summer. And then our principal paid us also to like come in early. So I have been doing a really good job saving my money to put myself in a good position. I was able to get unemployment, which is about to run out. And I've been doing like some little side gigs, here and there. So that's how I've been holding things down. And I think that's why it's so important to be like financially in a place where like I'm not wealthy by any means, but I'm not worried about, paying my bills. Well, now I am. Now I'm much more worried about money. But in the beginning, that was one of the things that allowed me to hold the line with such veracity.
Right. And I think you touched on, I didn't plan on talking about this, and I just kind of want to highlight what you were saying though, is we don't teach in schools. I never was taught how to save. As parents, a lot of parents don't teach their children how to save. And another thing that we don't teach our children is that it's okay to say no sometimes. But you kind of mentioned something there that just brought that to my mind. I kind of want to transition. So let me see, make sure I didn't forget. Is there anything I forgot from the point to where basically you're on unpaid leave? You're still on unpaid leave,
Yeah.
currently, correct?
I mean, so like personally, I did a religious exemption. That was kind of the pathway that I chose. I grew up Jewish. I've always had a deep faith. I named my son Caleb, which is a name from the Bible, which means most faithful. So I chose the path of a religious exemption because I felt like it was the most true to the why I didn't want to take the vaccine. So that's a little bit different. Like there's some people who did it for medical reasons. There's some people who did it just like for personally held beliefs. But my specific path was the religious exemption, and I'm currently not specifically named in any lawsuits, but I would consider myself like a party to and supporter of and a beneficiary if these lawsuits work out. I paid thousands of dollars out to support these cases. So we have 3 lawsuits going, and once hopefully, we're making a mission to go, or 2 of them have made submissions to go to the Supreme Court. So hopefully we'll get there.
Right. Okay. So you wore the mask pretty much the entire time, correct? You complied with the mask mandate as far as in schools. And then,
yeah, when I was working, I would more or less comply with it. Now, like, I had like pretty thin masks, and I was pulling my mask up and down. I was drinking a lot. I was eating a lot. I would get text messages sometimes from admin to tell me to pull my mask up, things like that. So, like, I wasn't like, just like compliant with it, but like I did it enough to the point where like I was allowed to keep my job without it being like a significant impediment. But outside of my job, or like if we, like I told you, like when we took kids on field trips in school, like in New York City, you were supposed to mask outside. We never masked outside with our kids. As soon as we were outside, we took our masks off. Now there were some teachers who kept them on, but like no teacher was telling me to put my mask on. And I wasn't telling any kids to put their mask on, and no teachers told kids outside to put their masks on either.
Do you think that if parents, and I'll go ahead and put teachers into this too, and then I'm going to play your post from today, but do you think if parents and teachers would have fought against the masks more, hindsight's always 20/20, I get that, but early on, that you might still have your job today? Do you believe masks led to the vaccination mandates?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this in several videos, but I believe that once you give them permission to like cover up your face, it's just such an important part of your humanity. You basically give them permission to do anything, right? If we had stopped with the mask, they would have never had permission to go any further. It would have been ridiculous for them to consider doing vaccine mandates. I remember I started teaching for open schools. It was the very beginning or the very end of 2020, right? The very beginning of 2021, this organization, Teachers for Open Schools. And we made our statement, and I remember like being like, I don't really care if teachers have PPE or any of this stuff. Like, I think it's all bullshit, But we had to have that as part of our thing to have any viability at all. We had to basically put like, and so my I guess what's it called? Like, I didn't actually put masks. I just put that teachers should have PPE. I didn't specifically say that people should wear masks. I said people should have PPE, we never said that they should be mandated. We should just said that they should have them. So, but I remember being like, guys, I think we should talk about the mask. I think we should include the mask in this, and being told by parents who wanted schools open, who were like hardcore in the open schools, like, nope, this isn't the masking time, or they believed in masks themselves, So I was always a little bit more radical than most of like fighters, and it's hard to not feel. I made some tweets in the last day being like, it's really hard to not feel resentment towards even the people who were speaking up but who told me not to say stuff about masks, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, because I'm always, I'm like I said, I'm big against masks on children. And I've always been saying that, that is their key to the next thing. There's a reason why children throughout this whole time, even as of today, I believe in New York City,
Toddlers,
toddlers are still wearing masks when the risk, I mean, we already know where the risk, if there is a risk for this thing, lies. And it's not in that segment of our population. And so I've been saying for the last year and a half, that there's a reason why your children still have a mask on. And it's because they're going to have to wear them. I mean, you see that play out with the adults. Did they ever let vaccinated teachers take the masks off at the school? Like just the vaccinated teachers? Because in some workplaces, vaccinated people were at first allowed to, while
yeah.
unvaccinated had to wear masks.
So I'm not sure how it was in New York City, but I know, for example, in my son's local school district, the teachers, if they were vaccinated, if they were like at the front of the classroom and like 6 feet away from people, they could take their mask off. No students, no unvaccinated teachers, but vaccinated teachers who were teaching, like, and 6 feet away from students could take their masks off. So what I ended up doing was I had this plastic shield that like went over my nose, and like it was like a visor. So when I was actively teaching, I would put that on. But like to walk around the building, I would put a regular mask on. And nobody ever said anything to me about that. But I couldn't, when I had the mask on, I just couldn't project. But when I had this little plastic shield on, like it almost felt like normal.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've seen some people wearing those actually. I went to Vegas twice, Las Vegas during
That's
lockdown.
where I saw it. That's where I
Yeah.
got the
I
idea
was
from
like,
in
what
Vegas.
the hell is that thing? They were pretty, I'm like, where do you even find that? What do you even call it? But I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
my waitresses, I always be, and I appreciate it. I like, because that's one of my big things too, is like, I cannot stand when you go out and the help is required to wear the masks. Or maybe they're not required, but they like feel like they have to. Like, it's disgusting to me. Like, it makes me want to throw up in my mouth when I see the help masked up, but everybody else is not. I'm like, is there any more obvious a sign of like classism, of like, or like who's the people who have power and money and status, and who's the people who are just like lucky to be around? It's disgusting to me, absolutely disgusting. And I forget where I was going with that, but just the I hate masks on help.
yeah. And so I know, okay, so we all as adults, we made our own decisions on masking. A lot of us we all have different situations personally, politically, different levels of how extreme or how we look at masking and even the vaccines, right? But there's one, I think, and you just did a post on it, so I'm going to try to play it right now. Hopefully it plays well for the people in here if they haven't seen it yet. But this whole post you did has so many different angles to it. And so I just wanted to spend just a couple minutes talking about that
Okay.
post because a lot of things that you said in that video are things that I hear as well. And even I've said some of the things that you said, but I think you answered it really well. And I just kind of want to talk about the discussion of masks on children. Because I didn't send my children to school for the last 2 years because I refused to put a mask on them. So ever since they shut down, they never went back. They did virtual learning, and then we had them in a daycare. So, but they never required masks at daycare the whole time, and even just for teachers was recent. But that's a whole other conversation. But I kept my kids out. I know a lot of people put their kids in. And people like me, we simply say, well, you know what? Let me just get to it. Let me just get to your post because I think it's perfect. It says everything. Oh shoot, I lost it. Okay, here we go. Let's see if it plays. Here we go.
Very common comment that I've been getting both here on Instagram and over on Twitter. This one right here, I'm picking on my girl, Lady Be Good, because that's my people's right there. And, we can have
good spirited conversation around these concepts and these ideas. That's a very important thing for me and my friends, and what I hope to be doing here on this page. And my response to comments like this is I 100% agree in a certain sense. I mean, I haven't been complying for a long time in terms of masking myself. However, I tolerated the masking of my son in school for a long time as well, because in one sense I could pull him out. Technically I'm not working, but in the other sense I feel like I am using my days to do things that are very important to set myself up more sustainably in the long term, so that I can homeschool him in the long term and not just for this short period of time. Now maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I should have just started homeschooling him and people would have come and I would have figured it out that way, found community and found a way to make money that way. I think about that. But I didn't do it that way, and this is the way I'm doing it, and I am using my days, and now I have to start making a little bit more money. Money's getting tight, so I really am using my days now. And parents have to work. And so I am creating a separate kind of economy, a parallel economy to compete with their system, and we're converting more and more people every day, but not everybody is there. And some people just want their government to work. They're, stuck on their lifestyles and this and that. Everybody's at different places. And as much as I wish that everybody would just stop complying with this garbage right now, that's just not how it is. So I support parents going out and heckling the mayor. I support them posing as press and going in and asking him questions and catching him off guard. I think all of these things are important.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack in there, and I didn't even have enough time to write all my questions down on this video, but hopefully we hit a lot of them in our discussion about what you posted there. My first question is going to be, you decided to have your child wear a mask. Why? And I just want to say, like, maybe I shouldn't say this, but what I want to say, I respect you, and like you said, we need to be able to have good spirited conversations about this, okay? I'm big on not putting masks on children, but when I hear you, I'm like, okay, but you had a plan. You have a plan. You're doing something about it. And so many people out there, you're speaking, for yourself, but there's a lot of people out there who aren't doing anything. So can you talk about why you decided to put a mask on your child, and what are your thoughts on people who say that people shouldn't put a mask on children at all whatsoever? There shouldn't even be a choice.
I mean, right now I'm like tolerant of the choice. I don't think there's anything you can do to keep private citizens from wearing a mask if they, I guess you can say that it's like a threat because you can't see their face, like to danger. But then again, we're kind of like veering on a dangerous balance between safety, security, and people's private individual choices, right? So I don't want to be regulating how individuals choose to mask or not. If you choose to mask, I don't think it's like whatever. I think it's stupid, but I'm also like, go ahead, make that choice. And you know what? If you're my friend and you add value to my life in enough other ways, like, whatever. You're my friend who wears a stupid mask on their face, and I'll probably let you know it's stupid. But that, whatever, we're friends. So why? I mean, it's a basic calculation. Like, I can keep my son home all day with me, right? And I can teach him, which I'm very confident I could do, which would take a couple hours out of the day, but then I have him all day nonstop, and I'm not bringing any money in. So it's not like I can pay for him to be doing programs or going somewhere to give me the time and the space I need to do the advocacy work that I feel like is necessary, and to set up a school, and to make the content, and to get my place in a way where I have an income. Like, I don't know what you do and like the way that you have it set up with your wife, with your jobs and stuff, but like everybody just like doesn't have the setup. Like, I'm a single mom, like I don't have a partner to like go halvesy with and figure it out. And a lot of people out there do, and maybe they could do a better job like restructuring their life to figure this out. Or parents could do and say like, all right, well, there's 5 of us here at this rally. Like, why don't the 5 of us just hire a teacher out? And I guess my only thing with that is like, if you do have like 5 toddlers or like 5 babies, one person can't take care of 5 babies. You know, like that's why you have to have nannies. And like, even if you're a pretty wealthy family, like if you live in New York City, like you're paying so much in rent and your cost of living is so high that you have to be really wealthy to afford a nanny. So I just don't think it's practical for a lot of parents to just be like, oh, I'm just going to pull my kid, you know, and just not work anymore. So, I mean, for me, it was the only place my son wore the mask. I told him all the time, like, pull the mask down if you want to, you know, take mask breaks whenever you want to. I was constantly on his school and going on to the district to try to advocate for them to come off. Like, I think it's the calculation, it's the opportunity cost calculation you make, right? Say, I
Yeah.
can spend a year advocating for my kid to get back to a normal school, or I can give up my income or, you know, a significant portion of our income and radically alter our lifestyle.
Sure. And we all had tough decisions to make. Like I said, no two of us are the same. But you know, I guess for me, like personally, or I go back to square one, and like it's easy for people to say just don't comply, right? Like that's an easy answer to everything, but at the same time that is the answer, like, you know, but it's now I think it's too late. Like people are already going to comply. People are already comfortable with it. Like the mass non-compliance needed to happen long ago, in my opinion. But what else? What else could we unpack in that video? Oh, I think one thing though that I see out of you was you had your line in the sand that you weren't willing to cross, and you were prepared for that moment, or you didn't have fear. I still don't think you had fear. I think you had a rhyme to the reason, and that's what I always tell my employees and people is like, hey, whatever decision you make, just have a reason for it. If it's wrong, we'll talk about, you know, why I may disagree or whatever, but have a reason. And you had a reason, and you had a plan, and I don't think you were scared. You drew a line, and you were not. Once that line came, you knew where your line stood, and you were gonna figure it out. And I think a lot of people make decisions based out of fear, and again, that's an easy thing to just say. But, you know, when you lose fear, like I always tell people, look, if luckily I didn't have to go through this at my place of employment like a lot of people did. But if I did, like I had my line and that I wasn't in, if that line was crossed, I would become the best cake baker that anybody's ever seen, right? Or I would find something, because I have enough confidence in myself that no matter what is thrown at me, I'm going to find a way to adapt. I'm going to find a way to make it work. I'm willing to move. I'm willing to change careers. I'm willing to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, whatever it may be, right? And that's one thing I respect. I may not agree with you on masking of your child, but your advocacy and what you do, what you have, and you continue to stand up for, and you're speaking out not just for yourself, but for a lot of other people who don't speak out. And so I just kind of I see you, but I see the masses. I see the sheep, if you will, the masses who just send their children to school without a mask. They aren't questioning anything. And even the ones who do question or might know that it's wrong or whatever, I don't see a lot of them advocating or speaking up. Even in my own family and friends, I'm one of a small handful of people who are willing to put their neck on the line, and even willing to lose friends and family to speak up for what I feel is right. But not enough people are speaking up. And I have a lot of respect for you, because you're making a conscious decision, but you're also taking on, like you said, you're like, okay, I could do this or I could do this. And I think that long term, this is a better plan, you know? And so for all, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? But my thing is like, I have so much more respect for people like you who made those decisions that you make, because you have a rhyme to your reason, and you're actually out there trying to create change. But
Right.
I feel most people aren't doing that. They're hoping for change, like Obama promised us, you know? And so I don't know. I know that's a lot.
Yeah.
I just felt
No,
like I
I
needed to
think
say
also,
that.
I think that there's also parents who do want change, who are activated, but in my personal opinion, they draw their line too early, right? And they do that also out of fear for their jobs, out of fear for their social status, out of fear for just like the adrenaline rush and like whatever it takes to do it, whether it be like showing up at the mayor's press conference with signs or blocking a street or proposing as the press like Daniela Jumpel did today, a New York City mother, and she got fired for that from her job. So like I think that people need to be more radical. I think people need to set their line a little bit further out than they do, right? So parents who are willing to show up at a rally, like, okay, that's great. Or parents who are willing to make a phone call, okay, that's great. But like maybe like going into the streets and being a little bit angry is a little bit more radical. Or maybe you do really need to just get together and with 5 people and pull your kids out. Like we need to be willing to take more radical lines earlier on, right? But you have to have good reasons for it. Like if you go back to the Declaration of Independence, like they list out so many reasons. They articulate the reasons why they're doing it. It isn't just like a brash thing, like an emotionally fueled thing. Like they gave logical arguments for it. So that's what I would like to think that I'm doing. And I hope that people who looked at me and saw me as radical, like, oh, she's an anti-masker, like, oh, she's willing to give up her job for this and da da da. Like, I hope that they see that these aren't radical things to do, that these are common sense things to do, that these are things that any reasonable person would do when they're put under the gun. And I don't want my page to be to like show off or to like be like an influencer unless the only influence I want to have is like that you can do it too, right? Like anybody can do this. Like I'm not a special person. Like I'm not special. I just choose to live in the truth. At whatever cost it does to live in the truth, I choose to live there because it's not free. Like the truth is not free. What's free is some narrative where you tell yourself, like, for example, like a really obvious one to see is like this narrative, like, oh, fat is beautiful, right? Like I don't want to fat shame people, but fat is not beautiful. Like fat is very unhealthy. Like, and that's just like truth. But it's a really easy narrative, like, oh, like I'm just like big boned, or like I'm just born like this, or whatever. Like it's beautiful. Like that's an easy narrative to like live in the fake world. The truth is a hard world to live in, you know? But that's where I choose to live, and anybody can choose to live there. You just have to be willing to like fall on your ass and like get a few scrapes and like get back on your skateboard and keep pushing.
Well said. Well said. Oh man. Um, so Mayor Adams now is in New York City. I think all across California now the masks have been lifted pretty much everywhere. I think I'm probably forgetting somewhere where they're still required. I know they're on airplanes and all that still, but in New York City, Mayor Adams said, I think on April 4th, which is today, that the
Yeah.
masks were supposed to be lifted, which is like I always laugh at how they project forward and say, not today, but in 2 weeks you can take
Right.
your
I
mask
mean,
off. But
admittedly, he did hedge it a lot. Like, if you go listen to the press conference, I was trying to find a good clip from it where he said, like, on May 4th, the toddlers will be unmasked. And, like, he he never says that. He's like, we're looking at the data and the metrics, and we're hoping that the numbers keep going in this direction. And if they go in this direction, perhaps we'll consider doing it. I don't know, whatever, you know. Like, so in the press conference, he never really says it. Now, there was a couple times when he spoke in particular. I guess there was this one time he spoke to a father, and he goes, "I got this. I'm the mayor. I'm going to take care of it. They'll be unmasked," right? So he said things like that where it's like, just trust them. They'll be unmasked. In his press conference, he's more wishy-washy. But yes, the idea was that today he was going to unmask them because, you know, the numbers are looking better. But apparently they're not looking better. But I think really the issue is that it's about power and control. And so parents had made a lawsuit against the city, and they filed it in like Staten Island, so they got kind of a favorable judge, and the judge ruled on their behalf and said that it was arbitrary and capricious, and it was no longer in effect. So he put a hold on the mandate. That was on Friday. That was like Friday, that like midday, that ruling came out. That afternoon, that evening, the mayor gets his court in session. Friday evening, they're able to pull court together to put a stay on that ruling to ensure that come Monday, no toddler smiles can be seen. Mask those kids. So, and the thing is that in court, they had argued the previous day that it was moot because on Monday it was going to expire anyways, and they were just going to let the mandate drop. So they argued it didn't matter because the mandate was going to drop. The judge says, okay, well, it's arbitrary and capricious, so we'll just get rid of it now if you're going to get rid of it on Monday anyways. And then she's like, no, we're just kidding. Because I really think that it's just about the power for them. They want to make sure if and when the mandate gets dropped, it's at their doing so that they can bring it back whenever they want. They don't want a court to tell them they don't have that power.
I agree with that, and that's exactly what the city of Burbank did to Tin Horn Flats. You know, they just kept going and going and going. It's all about power. So like here in California, and let's say hypothetically, is it just toddlers who are masked in New York still, or is it all children?
So the only age group that is mandated by the city of New York now, there's mask mandates at the federal level for nursing home facilities, like hospital settings and transportation. But the only group mandated by the city is toddlers in schools. If you're a kindergarten to 12th grade in schools, you don't have to. If you're going into stores as a regular citizen, you don't have to. The only mask mandate that is in place from the city of New York is toddlers in daycare and preschool facilities, whether they be private or state.
That is disgusting. That is disgusting. Okay, so hypothetically, let's say soon enough, politics plays its course and they release the mask mandate on the toddlers in New York. I'm not sure if there's any other further left place than New York or California right now in this union that's still mandating masks on children. Are you aware of any?
I think that there's like some random places here and there. I think that there's a district in like Minnesota, like one of the main ones, I want to say. But New York City is like the biggest city that's left, but there may be but they're the only ones that are singling out the toddlers. Like typically places, like if they get rid of the mask mandates, they get rid of them for everybody. Like the place that I'm talking about in Minnesota, I want to say, or one of those places in the Midwest, it's like the whole district. It's not just right? But New York City is the only place, like everybody else can take off masks, but them toddlers, better make sure them toddlers have masks on.
Purely political. Okay, so for the most part, you're right. I think the decisions were made to the districts, maybe even gets down to the school level, who knows. But let's say for the most part in this country right now, the mask mandate on children for the most part in schools has been lifted. Okay?
Yes.
But every single lifting, like you mentioned, said based on something. Based on hospitalization, based on something, right? But none of them ever said it's gone. They said it's just like they all use different words, but basically they're saying we're pausing it, right? For lack of a better words. If we need to, we'll bring it back. So I'm going to ask you this question. I know you're out of work because of the vaccine mandate. If they bring back masking for children in schools, what should parents do?
I mean, I think they should pull them. I don't think that parents should tolerate masks coming back. I mean, I don't, it's hard because once you put them in that building, like, what are you going to do? Right? Are you like, if somebody puts a mask on their face, like, are you going to personally attack that person? Like, how are you going to then shield yourself from legal recourse if so I don't know. I'm hoping to have my own school set up by that time next year, so they should join my school and not send their kids. But again, it becomes like a monetary thing because obviously my school is not going to be free, whereas the local public school is. I think parents need to take more radical action. So, you know, like if they're going to pull their kids, okay, you need to have a lot of kids to pull their kids, but maybe you just like take a morning off of work and like stage a crazy stunt. I think stunts are like, I know a lot of people don't like them because it makes you look a certain way, and then they're like, well, it undoes your credibility for when you if you want to have a meeting and stuff with them. But these people are not nice. Like, we need to stop allowing them to like pretend that they're nice and they have the upper hand because they like pretend to be nice when they are masking fucking toddlers. Like, these people are not nice. I don't care how big his smile is or how good his suit looks. You know what I mean? So I just don't think it undermines your credibility as much as people think it does to like do something that's a little bit crazy, right? To like show up at a school with a crazy sign while all the parents are dropping off their kids saying that masks don't have any efficacy. I think that's what I would do, right? I think that if they were to bring back mask mandates, I would go stand in front of my kid's school with a crazy sign, and I would make sure I have a camera person there to take pictures and try to get some media from it. I think I like political stunts. I know a lot of people don't like them, but I'm into the stunts.
I completely agree with you, and I have this debate with friends all the time. You know, I have a certain friend. She says people will not tolerate it again, and I always like to play devil's advocate. And I go,
I think they would, though. It's the problem.
But that's what I say. I said, but they already did it once. You know,
they brought him back. They dropped him over the summer, and then they brought him back. And I did not think people would put the damn mask back on their face, and they freaking did. Like, almost like that.
So how much of it is just I have bills to pay, you know, all of the life things versus how many of these people actually, well, we didn't get into this. I don't know what your thoughts are on the whole pandemic as a whole. I probably have a general idea, but like how much of it is people just believe in this and it's an information war. And that's why I always get back to like, I love people like you.
I think it's both, right? I think that it's just easier to go along to get along and not question the narrative. And the censorship is pretty next level. Like, if you're just a regular person, who has like cable TV and reads pretty regular news sources, you know, the New York Times, you're just simply not going to have any access to alternative ideas. Like, the mainstream, the Overton window is so small. So I think that it's a combination of just like literally like these people don't have anything, like you don't know what you don't know. So there's that. And then anytime there is an inkling of something else, because you have 0 point to go on, it's just easier to be like, well, that person's crazy, and you know, I have bills to pay, and I want to go to brunch, and I want to watch football or soccer or whatever with my friends.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people just told me, they were like, oh, I wanted to like do something that was like pretty basic, like, or even to the point where it's not even like I wanted to do something, it was just like everybody else was doing it. Like, I have had people tell me straight up they did it because everybody else was doing it, and they didn't want to explain why they didn't want to.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's sad because, you know, I always like to ask myself, like, what's the solution here? You know, like with our political, like, how do we fix the two? How do we all talk about all the problems? But that was the other piece.
That was the other piece I wanted to say was like, I don't want to wait until next fall. I want people right now. And like, if I had a job and I was in a different position, my focus would, I think, be running for office. But because of the position I am in, my focus is like trying to like start a school and like get myself in a financially stable position. But if I was in a financially stable position right now, I'd be running for something. I need more people to be running for office. We need our people in office so that come time next fall after these elections, when they try to bring back these mandates, that our people are in these offices and they can't even do it. So the idea that they're going to bring them back isn't even a thing.
Right. No, I'm with you. And you're 100% right. And I'll roll it back even further. I already mentioned it. I can't stress the importance of the people in here, you guys. You have to speak up. You have to share information, share lives, because we are literally being bombarded. We're outnumbered when it comes to the information war. But yet we, the people, hold the numbers, right? But we're useless if we're not empowered and we're not educated. And so I thank you for your platform, and I want to give you a minute here just to kind of tell the people, what are you doing now? What are you setting up? How they can find you and all of those things. But everybody in here, you guys have to speak up. Whatever it is, you have to speak up. Speak to your friends, speak to your families, encourage them to speak up and not be afraid of what somebody else is going to view them or what somebody else is going to say. Stand for what you believe in. And I post this from time to time. Once you lose fear, you do what you know to be right. So do what you know to be right, people, okay? And speak out and use your voice, because we have to rely on each other. I'm going to let you have the final words, and please, in doing so, also let everybody know where they can find you, where they can find your platforms. Obviously, you guys, you can, if you don't know, up here on any live, you can tap that and boom, you can follow somebody right away. So do that here on Instagram. But I know you have a lot going, so 5-10 minutes, you have the floor. Let people know what you're up to.
All that last little bit that you said, 100% agree with that. Going back to something I had said earlier, you know, I do this not to try to show off, but just to literally say, hey, this is what I'm doing and you can do it too. So that's ultimately my goal on here, to have good conversations and to connect with people who are rather like-minded, like you. I would say we're rather like-minded towards each other, but also like people who aren't. I really crave conversations with people who I see issues differently on, and I love to try to find common ground. And that's one thing, you know, one of my coworkers at work, we saw things so differently. Like, she's triple vax, you know, boosted up, all that, but she's not COVID crazy either, you know, like she's just more like she thought it was the right thing to do. But we see things wildly different, but like I consider her one of my really good friends. Like, you know, if my car broke, I always say, like, if my car broke down and I had to call somebody, like, I know I could call her and she would come pick me up, you know, like that's what we need in friendships. And so yeah, let's have good conversations, and you can do this too. That's the big thing. So you can, of course, find me on Instagram. I have my YouTube channel, which is also Teaching Liberty. I'm also going to be starting up on Rumble, because again, I'm always trying to make sure that my actions are matching my words and my values. And I think you know, you have to be on YouTube just because it is the biggest platform, but Rumble is really trying to you know, treat content creators in the way I think that they deserve to be treated, and protect freedom of speech in a way that YouTube isn't, at least from what I've seen so far. So I'm going to be getting on Rumble very soon too. I'm also on Twitter at Teach Liberty 1, and you can join the Teaching Liberty platform, right? It's like a subscription service, so it's like a Patreon or a Subscribe Star, and you can support me at like $3 or $5 a month. And, you know, in exchange, we have a little discussion board back there. We have some members only content. Members get 20% off like merch or any courses that I do. I'm about to be offering another course with Elizabeth, who's in here, Lady Be Good. We're going to start our Sprouting Food Security too. So a lot of different things going on. I'm really trying to connect and collaborate with different people because that's what it's about, pouring back into our own community. We have to stop giving our dollars out to these people who turn around and use our dollars against us. So this is, you know, by the people, for the people, and I really mean that, and I hope that people hold me accountable to that, and I know that you'll do that based on this conversation, and I really appreciate you for having me.
Well, I thank you for coming on. And real quickly, what is the mission of Teaching Liberty? What is your mission?
You know, that's a good question to ask. It's something that I'm actually thinking about right now, because I'm trying to really put it down and solidify my business plan. But I had put up the tagline, you know, by the people, for the people. It's not my tagline. It's obviously, you know, like from the Constitution. But I think that really is kind of what the mission is to create a platform where, you know, teaching liberty. So we're trying to model how to think, right? Not what to think, but how to think. And I don't want to do it in a way where I'm like constantly chasing like big interviews from, you know, people that have really wide audiences. Now, not that I would like turn that down, or not that I'm not necessarily not trying to get those things, but like I love to just have conversations with regular people, you know, whether they have 300 followers, 3,000 followers, or 300,000 followers. Like, I'm interested in conversations with everybody, and I'm not interested only in getting big. Like, I want my platform to grow. I would love for it to ultimately be like a source of revenue for myself, but it's always first about the people and making sure that like your economy of scale never outgrows the value and experience that you're providing to the people.
Wow. Well said. Well said. And you also, I see you post from time to time about Chalkboard Rev, right? Is that what it is?
Oh yeah, I'm making content for them. So you know, we've been making big waves in the national media in terms of education scene. You know, we're making connections with a lot of other organizations that are doing work on the ground with parents defending ed. I actually had somebody on there on my personal podcast today. You know, so there's going to be some big things coming for Chalkboard Review. I'm excited to see where that goes. And yeah, I really love the opportunity to work with other people to make content. So that, yeah, definitely follow Chalkboard Review. We're conservative, like platform, like openly conservative, but we publish anything. Like we publish opinion pieces from across the spectrum.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, for everybody that's still in here, follow Stephanie at Teaching Liberty. I'm sure you can find all of these links if you weren't able to catch them or write them down, or you're not able to rewatch this in her profile or on her page.
Yeah, teachingliberty.org. I don't think I ever said the website. You can join the Teaching Liberty community at teachingliberty.org. Thank you,
Awesome.
Stevie Cruz.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on. I think maybe maybe down the road we can come back on and maybe we could have more of a debate style forum.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to have you on my podcast. So
that would be awesome. That would be awesome. But thank you for coming on. Any final words for the people?
No, man, I just want to say
It's freezing. Is it freezing on your guys? It's frozen. You're frozen on my end. So I'm going to have to end it. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I don't want to lose the live. It's freezing. Y'all, if you can hear me, I apologize. I really don't want to lose this live. Oh, we lost her. Are we still here? I lost her. Can y'all hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me real quick. All right. I don't know what happened there, y'all, but thank you, Stephanie. Hopefully, I'd like to do this again. Maybe in a debate forum, we'll go back and forth. Maybe invite a couple other people on, because I also agree with her that it's very important that we're able to have good-spirited conversations. You guys, I'm probably one of the people that needs to focus on that more than anybody. But thank you again, Stephanie, for coming on. For everybody that's still in here, join me next Monday. I'm a big proponent that PCR is the driver of this entire pandemic. I'm going to tell you, I don't believe in COVID-19. Okay, I say that to get your attention. Okay, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, but I am going to tell you this. PCR is the epicenter of COVID-19. Next Monday, 4/11, I will be doing what I consider to be PCR 101. If you don't know about PCR, I highly suggest you tune in. If we want to expose and end this pandemic, we have to start talking about the testing that drove this pandemic worldwide, y'all. Again, thanks for joining us, people. Keep continuing to do your part and speak up. And don't forget, y'all, the most important thing.